Hi, Andrea. It's good to see you today.
Morning, Michelle. Thanks for having me. Great to see you too.
Yeah, thanks for being willing to share a little bit of your story and how you've been able to make some progress in your own activities with running and otherwise. And I'd love to hear, from your perspective, how the mind-body approach has helped you. And yeah, so where would you like to start?
Well, I guess I'll start with the backstory of what brought me to wanting to learn to unlearn my pain that I didn't realize was as much in my control as I've come to realize that it is now. I I guess I began to be symptomatic 10 plus years ago, and I was never really active. I did floated in and out of aerobics in my lifetime, and I was a cheerleader, but was never really super active, and became more active when I was 39, looking at a new decade. And I said, it's time to really get my life in order, and I'd like to exercise more. So I was one of those New Year's resolutionaries that went to the gym, and I stuck with it. And I walked on the treadmill, and I started walking so fast and hard, I decided it's easier to run. So I started running, and I had never been a runner ever. Started running, and then I'm goal driven, so decided to let a 5K be my goal. So I started training for a 5K, and I did that, and then saw a newspaper at the rec center that talked about triathlons, and I said, oh, I think I'll train for a triathlon. And we had a pool as a kid, so I swam a lot. So I started training for a triathlon, and it was all in the rec center gym, stationary bike, swam laps in the pool, and ran on the treadmill. And my husband, when I told him I was training for a triathlon, he said, oh, good luck with that. And I kind of took that as he didn't think I could do it. So
Ah,
I decided I was going to show him and kept training. And somewhere within that training, I realized that I started getting a little fatigued, more so than I thought I should be for what I was doing. And we were in the process, I look back now, we were in the process of moving. It was a pretty stressful time of building a new house and living in the other one and going back and forth, trying to make time to go into the new house. And they tested me for Lyme disease. And I think that's where the slippery slope began of what's wrong with me. And fast forward, I'm turning 52 this year. And up until last year, when I first came to your workshop, things kind of just kept piling on. If it wasn't chronic fatigue, it seemed like maybe it could be an autoimmune disease. My sister has lupus. So it was just one doctor, one specialist after the other, things that kind of would come and go, but there was no common factor that might say it's this diagnosis or that diagnosis. And if we talked about fibromyalgia, chronic pain, or excuse me, chronic fatigue syndrome.
hmm
It could be
were you diagnosed with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue?
no, the rheumatologist diagnosed me with an unspecified connective tissue disorder, which
Interesting. Okay.
are like a catch-all for I think you have something, but I don't know what it is.
I
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
yeah. And then throughout that process, I thought I had irritable bowel syndrome with my running, would always have some problems with my belly and my gut. I'm
Mhm.
trying to think of all the different factors. There were so many different things that seemed like, well, this week it's joint pain, and next week, it was something else. Irritable bowel, big thing that led me to food insensitivity down that path. So I stopped eating gluten and dairy and certain fruits and vegetables, which would otherwise be healthy, but
Mhm.
went on FODMAP diet. Just always searching, or maybe it's a vitamin deficiency. And I was hospitalized with, uh, mm, gosh, how can I not remember? Um, It'll come back to me,
Yeah.
but with an intestinal, I had to have a diverticulitis. There
I
it
was
is.
going to ask if it was diverticulitis. Okay.
Diverticulitis.
Uh-huh.
Um, so just so many things. And then there was also vertigo at times,
Mm.
and you name it.
So
So
it's really moving all through your body in different ways.
absolutely, absolutely. And then depression,
Mm,
because there were times. So I do think at one point I was overtraining. I don't think it was all just
okay.
physical.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like, I'm kind of hopping into Unlearn Your Pain and back to symptoms. Now, in hindsight, realize that a lot of my overtraining was when my mom was sick and she died, and I opened up
Mhm.
a studio. So there were so many things happening, and I just kept exercising and exercising, exercising. So
Yeah.
part of it, I think, was overtraining,
Mhm.
and in addition to just the factors of what led me to over exercise. And
Sure.
then I was down and out, fully depleted. I could barely, I remember leaving my shopping cart in Hannaford because I couldn't even push it. I was so tired. And I
Wow.
went and I couldn't even make it to the couch. I fell asleep with my head on my desk in the kitchen.
Wow.
And then from there just became depressed because everybody's doing something right now except for me. And there's pictures
Mhm.
of people running and riding their bikes, and I'm exhausted and I can't do anything. And that was about 7 years ago.
Okay.
So then you arrived on the scene, and so you did you trained with Training for More, so to do a 5K, and you talked about your health and your lifestyle coaching, and you kind of dabbled a little bit about um, the neurotransmitters and things that you
The
might be
neural pathway. Yes.
and
Hmm.
you might be able to reprogram those. And I was like, no, there's really something wrong with me. It's not in my head. So I
Sure.
don't, that's what Michelle's talking about. That's not me.
Hmm.
And, um, and you asked if I might be able to help promote your lifestyle coaching through my Training for More channels. And I was happy to make a connection with
Hmm.
Christy Cross at the hospital. And then you came and did an Unlearn Your Pain seminar for the community health team. And at the time I was employed by the hospital, so I was there.
Hmm.
And it was revolutionary because I felt like you were talking to me. I wanted to look around and see, is there anybody else here? Or is Michelle talking to me? And it hit me, and I think that was last November, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and now I can't believe next month is November.
I know. It's been a whole year.
Yeah. And I said, you know what? It makes sense. What she's saying makes sense. And all of the list of things that you showed that could be, you know,
The common syndromes that are associated with neural pathway
yeah.
pain. Yeah.
And there were so many of them, so many.
Uh,
And at the same time, I had been seeing my chiropractor, which is just a regular routine maintenance thing for me.
hmm.
And he's been filled in on the story for years. He's been with me on this whole journey. And one day he said to me, why don't you just tell yourself you're going to feel better?
Huh.
And I said, funny you should say that, because this girl, Michelle, and your brain is so powerful. So I decided that day I was going to tell myself that I was going to feel better. So
Mhm.
I downloaded the book that you
Mhm.
recommended.
Unlearn Your Pain by Dr.
um,
Schumacher. Yeah.
And I still haven't gotten through it all because it helps me immediately. So
Huh.
I didn't even finish reading it.
Yeah. You didn't
Yeah,
need to. Yeah.
because I really believed in it.
Mm.
You have to, because if you don't believe in the process, if you're skeptical, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I've been practicing um, running. So I run now. I don't really run the marathon distance as much anymore because, well, I haven't in 5 years because of everything I was going through. I
Mm.
was utterly depleted and decided to hang up the distance. But I'm going to get back because now
Ah.
I believe I can do it. Uh,
Yeah.
so, ranging everything from Achilles pain to knee issues and back problems. Um, as I mentioned before, running, thinking I had irritable bowel syndrome, a lot of times it would flare up the pressure of a race versus
Oh.
training.
Huh.
But there are times, still when I'm running. So I find myself, if anybody sees me, they're going to think, what's the matter with that woman? But I'm running and I'm talking out loud
Uh-huh.
and I say, I have irritable bowel, or no, I have my mind body syndrome. I
Mm-hmm.
have irritable bowel, and I can run without needing a pain in my stomach. And I say it over and over. And honestly, within 90 seconds, 2 minutes, the pain goes away.
Wow.
It is,
That is amazing.
and I never thought, and I tell people about this, and some of them still think I'm a little cuckoo, I think.
I know because I know people think what I do is like, that's a little out there. That's a little woo-woo, Michelle. I'm like, no, it's not. It's neuroscience. Can I just explain?
Yes. And it's even been knee pain.
Mm,
Oh, and I know I have tight muscles and I need to stretch more. But
sure.
I also know that because I have tight muscles, one time, and it still is within the past 2 weeks. And I think riding my bike, I did a little that can flare up your knees when your feet are clipped in your pedals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had a knee issue, but I knew it was tight glute and um, quad muscles. So I'm rolling and I'm stretching and it's getting better. But I do think my body remembered the last time I ran, I had a knee pain. So then
Mm,
I start running and I get a knee pain. Same process. I have mind body syndrome. I don't have knee problems. I'm rolling, I'm stretching. I'll deal with this on my own and it goes away.
that's
It really,
amazing.
it is amazing. And I'm so thankful um, to have found this process. And that goes
Yeah.
with food intolerances as well. I've
Mm,
gone eating gluten in moderation because I do think it's still inflammatory.
mm-hmm.
My body doesn't necessarily like a lot of gluten, but it
Right.
doesn't cause IBS symptoms.
Yeah.
And there
Interesting. So
is
you're
that
eating gluten again.
I am,
Wow.
and dairy. I don't drink milk, but I do almond milk just
Uh-huh.
because it's become my preference for taste.
Yeah.
Uh, but I remember the fateful day, oh, it has to be 5 years ago. I ate an ice cream cone and we were on vacation in California. And at the same time, my son was going through some really horrible legal problems in Florida.
Mm,
That day, he was going to court. And I just remember how sad I was and how awful. And
mm-hmm.
that was the last day I ate ice cream. And I doubled over in pain.
Mm,
And now looking back, realize it was the emotional upset that my body remembered when you eat ice cream, now you must not feel good. And I eat and enjoy ice cream now without any problems.
oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
What a shift. I just hear you saying that it sounds like you went from constantly maybe interpreting physical symptoms from a physical cause to maybe them being present to circumstances or emotion that happened to be with you in that moment, and that maybe you're making different links. Is that accurate to describe what you've changed?
Yeah, because I never really looked at, so I did dive into the book so far as to start recording memories and maybe traumatic events in your childhood, or, and I think we all have a little something that maybe we've swept under the carpet or didn't think bothered us. My mom was sick and she died. It was a blessing because she wasn't well. And I thought I was okay with her passing, but maybe I wasn't, and maybe I didn't allow myself to grieve or mourn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then that stressful time of her passing and me opening up my studio just kind of brushed over things that I never really dealt with.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. And so there are things that I feel I haven't fully dealt with from my childhood, but I've come to a place where I'm okay with it, that I let it control how I feel and
Yeah,
my choice. That, maybe something did happen, um, and you don't excuse it, you address it, you look at it, but yet you're willing to say that was the past. And I can make choices for how I feel here and now and not let that affect me.
hmm. That's so
Yeah,
empowering. It's
it
so
really has.
empowering.
Yeah. And I still, no matter who I run with or walk with, and so many people that I still associate with have been with me for years. And they
Mm-hmm.
saw me just drag myself down and they knew that there was something more to it. There's no way that Andrea can have all these conditions and can't eat all these foods, and
Yeah,
there's more to it. But yet I wasn't receptive to hear that. You
sure.
know, you have to be willing to say there is something going on, and I'm going to take ownership of it so I can feel better.
Yeah.
And that took time for me to come to that realization. And now I feel like I look at other people and say, "Oh, you could feel so much better, right?" And
Yeah.
and especially with social media, you see so many people saying this is wrong and that's wrong, and I'm like, "Oh, you change it."
Mm-hmm.
But you have to want it, as I eventually wanted it for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know that I think sometimes when you first talk about the mind body connection, people feel like you're saying it's just mind over matter, change your mind, everything's fine. It's a little more than that, right? There's learned triggers. There's things that we sometimes just didn't have time to process because we were so busy. Like you said, mentioned when you open your studio, maybe you didn't have time to process the grief because sometimes we just don't. We just keep moving, and that's just life. I think like that mind body connection, it's so much more than just mind over matter, but it is about changing your mind and really expanding choice and getting control of your body back and like realizing my decisions really have such an impact on how I feel that
Yeah,
that is so it's so huge in the process
it is.
is. And it's
And
really common. I think that's what I always want people to hear. It's like, it's not some like, oh, I'm weird and not like everyone else. Everyone has physical manifestations of emotion. It's a human condition. All
right.
of us experience it. It's just some things are going on and we under the surface and we don't yet know until we get, like for you, it sounded like you had really quickly seen some benefit once you learned about the neuroscience behind it and through that presentation.
I would say it was immediate when I really welcomed the information and had an open mind about it. And
Mm,
maybe because I was at such a point of feeling exasperated for 10 years of not getting answers, and
yeah.
then seeing your story of not getting answers, and it was this, that, and the other thing with, labels.
Mhm.
Um, and I was just really ready at that point to say, I'm going to make everything better and in my control.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and I was just thinking too, when we talked about my mom passing away and opening the studio, a big part of that was her lifetime of neglect for her well-being, and that she was in a place, and she was 80 when she died, which I think in today's standards is young. She could have lived healthier longer,
Mm-hmm.
but she had diabetes and was obese and had heart disease. And as she was in a nursing home, because she was of a physical size, my dad couldn't take care of her. So she needed nursing care. There was one day she really struggled. And she said, "Don't let this happen to you." And I said, "I promise I won't." And I took that to the extreme,
Uh,
and it was her desire for me to be healthy that put me in overdrive. It was my interpretation of what she wanted for me.
sure.
Uh, and then those lines were blurred, and I wasn't sure why I was doing what I was doing. And it's crystal clear to me now. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, no, it's been great. Obviously, there's still some setbacks periodically,
Mm-hmm.
or triggers, as you said, but I've become much more aware of what those things might be and how I can stop it, nip it in the bud. And I do hope my running is actually, I'm faster and stronger and more confident than I have ever been, which you think as you age, maybe that's going to go away. But
Sure.
and to take the pressure off, it doesn't have to be faster, you know,
Right.
but I do see just a difference in the mind body. I do have this, I've got this, and I'm going to keep
Yeah.
going. I'm strong,
Yeah.
and I'll to my body when I'm tired, and that's
Yeah.
okay, to take some breaks and be
Sure.
good with myself.
That's awesome. That's so beautiful that you're, running faster and doing more now than you thought maybe you ever would. And yet you said you were quick to say, but it's not about faster because this healing is about really being attuned to your body and your mind, listening to yourself, being super gracious and kind to yourself. We're so often really loving, kind to everyone else and super hard on ourselves. I don't know if you can relate to that, but I can. And
Yeah.
that's so much of this invitation and this work is to really start to be kind to ourselves and also say, hey, I don't have to be held back by this. This pain isn't me. It's
Yes.
something that I'm feeling. And so let me move through that. And emotions do move through once we can attune to them.
And I think it's important to note that unlearn your pain.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I thought, oh, well, that's not me because I don't really have pain. That
Okay.
it does apply for people with chronic fatigue or other symptoms. Because, you know, at first I thought, oh, you know, maybe it isn't me. But it really is for everybody, whether you're trying to train for something or just be happy in life, to go out and take a walk or play with your grandchildren or whatever the case may be. We
Mm-hmm.
all have something that we can address differently and reprogram ourselves to not believe just because it happened in the past doesn't mean that's always the way it has to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely improves and increases choice, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I made a choice yesterday because I got this handy dandy new Apple Watch, which is great. And I love tracking my physical activity. And
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, Sunday, and I didn't close all my rings. I'm like, oh, I got to. No, I don't. I don't have to close my rings because I work hard 6 days a week physically.
Uh-huh.
And so I have a gap. I'm okay with that, you know, and made the choice to say, I'm going to go apple picking and have fun with kids. And it's not about what something tells me I have to do. It's my choice
Yeah.
to feel good.
Yeah. And that's so good. When I'm working with clients or students, so much of what I encourage people to do is exactly what you just said, is to increase play and joy pathways, because so much about healing is re-engaging with what we love, what we
Mm-hmm.
enjoy, and of course, making healthy choices, but just being more holistic and more ourselves, maybe
Yeah.
that we let ourselves to be in the past.
And I do have to say, as hard as the past, what are we now, October, 7 months have been with COVID, I do think it's been a transforming time for me to appreciate my family and maybe taking some downtime and slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been another helpful factor, considering I started this journey almost a year ago, but 7 months of it have been during COVID,
Yeah.
which we all need to realize that, you know, adjust priorities sometimes. And that helps.
If you could think back to November, and of course, in November, none of us knew what 2020 would bring. And
Right.
we would never have known that, February, March, April, that COVID would happen. Um, do you think things would have been different for you physically if you hadn't learned the associations between the
Oh, if
mind
I
and the body?
so if I hadn't adopted mind body philosophies, it could have been different. Yes, because I didn't necessarily cope with things the same way that I do now.
Oh, okay.
So I wonder that maybe stress might have gotten the better of me potentially. And it's, you know, it's hypothetical at this point. We don't know.
Exactly.
But I do think it has given me the ability to say, and I've even, and I say talk myself out of it, but I've even reversed headaches, which
Mm,
come from stress. So had I not had that ability to say, I release this pain in my head, I'll deal with stress on my own,
hmm.
you know, I think that the spring and summer could have gone a lot differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
So where you are now, do you have a favorite tool that you use, a meditation, or like you say, like you do a lot of talking as you're running? Do you have a
Yeah.
favorite approach to the way that you change symptoms or get yourself into a better place?
I think it's just that repetition of reminding myself, and I do it internally. If I'm in a public place, I don't talk out loud, but you know, I've come to realize your brain hears you whether you're speaking out loud or not.
Mm-hmm.
Just the constant, I have mind body syndrome. I don't need this pain. I release this pain in my head. I release this pain in my stomach. And just going back to repeating it maybe 3 times. I have mind-body syndrome. I don't have irritable bowel. And so it's just the repetition that has really seemed to be it for me. And I have gotten a little bit more back into a routine of exercise, which helps me as I'm running to just remind myself I am working out on a regular basis and I am strong. So I can do this. Just
Yeah.
positive mantras, be it internal or saying it out loud.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
If you can imagine someone watching this who's, hopeful for the same type of recovery, do you have any words of encouragement for what you might say to someone who's not yet reversed symptoms?
I would just say to anybody who's experiencing any of the symptoms, because there's such a big list, to love yourself enough and be open-minded enough to just try it. I think back to that day with Dr. Sullivan saying, just tell yourself you're going to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. Life is short. So just take a few minutes for yourself and give this a try, because it is possible. I was the biggest naysayer out there. I've got this. I don't need help. But we all need help, and we all need tools in our toolbox. And it is so worth it to feel good and know that it's in your control. So I would say open mind and go for it.
Awesome. Wow, your story is really inspiring, and I'm sure that your sharing today will help others. I'm so glad that we had this chance to talk together.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm
Thank
so excited for your new business. Is there anything you want to tell us about what you're doing now in Bennington for your business?
Sure. So I've gone back to, previously my studio was Options Health and Fitness, and it was brick and mortar, come do classes. And I'm not doing that part of it now, but I am back to Options Health and Fitness. And the biggest thing I'm doing right now with COVID in mind is remote 5K training. So helping people to set goals that they can reach individually at home and train for a 5K, knowing that other people in their group are doing the same thing. Even though we're not physically together, we are working together for the same goal. And that is helping us not only get through COVID, but help, to get our physical self back together, because I think between March and now, a lot of us fell off the wagon, as it were.
Me.
So, right? So that package, I hope to promote to businesses that they can use their work funding to do remote 5K, and private health coaching, lifestyle coaching. And I've decided now to work part-time as my own schedule. It's about half-time, so I can still be with my grandson and with my dad who lives with us. And again, that work-life balance. But yeah, if anybody's interested, options.biz is my website.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I do, because I feel like you opened up a whole new world, with my wedding song I danced to. And I wouldn't be able to continue with my business if I wasn't feeling well enough. So this Unlearn Your Pain has definitely helped me do what I want to do.
I'm so glad, Andrea. It's so awesome. Thanks for sharing this time today. It's really good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while because of COVID, but it's good to see you here.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.